Hey, Market Chameleons. Thanks for joining us for the pre-market show. How are you doing, Dmitry?
Pretty good, Will. How are you? Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And good morning.
Another great day to do a pre-market show.
Yep.
Let me, before we get started, D, I'm putting out the link to the Zoom meeting. If you are showing a fuzzy screen, we sometimes have these issues between Zoom and YouTube Live. So anyone on YouTube Live, I put out the link to the Zoom meeting if you want to come in here. Remember to use the chat to ask questions for Dmitry and I. And also give us a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get all the information when it comes. And with that, you want to get started, Dima?
Sure. So you're putting up the disclaimer?
I will put up the disclaimer.
Okay. So really quick, everybody, before we get started, keep in mind, Will and I, or Market Chameleon, we're not registered investment advisors or broker dealers. We're not telling you what to do. We're just sharing ideas. If you need professional advice, then go seek out a registered investment advisor or call your broker. They should be able to help you answer your questions. Having said that, there's the disclaimer.
Well done, buddy. What do you have for us this morning?
All right, let me share my screen. And while I'm doing that, a couple things I think are coming out today and tomorrow. I think the consumer confidence numbers are coming out. New home sales are coming out. Keep an eye out. I think the Fed chairman will be speaking tomorrow. So just a couple things to keep an eye out on. Today, let's go over, we'll go over, as usual, we'll start out with what's moving in the pre-market hours. Maybe we'll look at a few different stock screens, see if there's anything notable upcoming in the earnings. And maybe we'll take a look at some option strategy setups. Of course, hopefully, we have time to answer any questions that are coming in through the live chat. So this here, we usually start out with what's trading in pre-market hours. This is before the market opens. We have the most active stocks, the biggest percentage gainers, biggest percentage decliners. And I'm going to just narrow this list down right now to stocks with the market cap above 50 billion, just to see what's going on in the higher market cap stocks. And here on the top of the list, I see AMGN, Honeywell, MDT, CRM. So I think, Will, you said something. There's some news on AMGN and Honeywell, right?
Well, they're doing a readjustment of the Dow. So leaving the Dow is Pfizer, Raytheon, and Exxon, and this AMGN, Honeywell, and CRM are joining the Dow. So
right.
that's
Yep. So there's the news there. AMGN up 4% in the pre-market hours on 22,000 shares. Honeywell up 3.7% in the pre-market hours on 38,000 shares. I think this MDT also, they had earnings today before the market opened. That's up 3.3% in the pre-market hours on 28,000 shares. Let's just take a look at AMGN from historical price action analysis. Now I know this is news, they don't always get added to the Dow, but let's just take a look. What did AMGN tend to do when it opened up? Had a big gap up, move to the upside. So here we see AMGN closed 235.57. Yesterday it's trading 245 in the pre-market hours, which is up 4%. Here's the range in the pre-market, 244.01 to 246. And the VWAP price, volume weighted average price, 245.12. So right around here. Biggest VWAP bar in the pre-market hours is between 244.96, 245.09 on 10,200 shares. So not like a lot of volume there, for AMGN. It's not trading a ton of volume, but that's right here. You see how it's trading in pre-market hours. This is the pre-market chart. So maybe not enough volume, but let's just take a look at if it opens up around here. Let's take a look at its gap up history. And what we're going to do is say, well, when AMGN had a big gap up at the opening, what did the stock tend to do after the opening? Okay, so here it's looking at the last 3 years of data and taking the 12 largest gap up opening moves. That's excluding earnings, because earnings are a little bit different. Those are earnings stuff. And we see here, these are the dates and the gap up moves for each of these dates. So we see a lot of times it was just sensitive to the market going up. A couple of times it had some press releases. The average of those opening gap moves to the upside was 2.7%. I see a high here of 4.1% on March 13th, 220. That compares to today's so far in a pre-market up 4%. So what did it do after the opening? So let's see, from the opening to the high of the day, the average move was 3.1%. We see here in a high of 9.7. From the open to the low of the day, the average move was negative 1.8% with a max loss move of negative 4.3% in the last 12 observations here. From the open to the close, it tended to go up more often than down. 75% of the time it opened high. It closed higher from the opening price, 25% lower for an average gain of 2.2%. Looks like leading out, coming out the next day, 2 days, 3 days after it, that stock tended to weaken. So we see 1 day after, 75% of the time, it was lower for an average loss of 2.2%. 2 days later, also lower, 75% of the time for an average loss of 2.6%. So that's really quick look at a price action analysis for AMGN after a big pre-market gap move to the upside. Again, it's not trading a lot of stock in the pre-market hours, so we'll see if it opens right around there or not. Let me comment Honeywell. Same news. It's up on the same news that's entering also into the Dow Jones. MPT that reported earnings today. So let's take a look, up 3.3% in the pre-market hours. So we see here closed 113 cents. It's trading 103.5. That's up 3.4% in the pre-market hours. Not a lot of shares trading. 29,000 shares trading in the pre-market hours. We see biggest VWAP is between 102.56 and 102.90 on 9,500 shares. So here's the pre-market chart, a little bit choppy. Let's just take a look at from an earnings history how this stock tended to do. So these are last 12 earnings, and let's take a look at what it did at the opening and then from the opening to the close. So opening gap, 73% of the time it opened higher, 27% it opened lower for an average gain of 1.8%. Here we see right now it's up about 3.4%. The average move up or down in absolute terms was 2.7% up or down with a high move of 6%. After the opening, from the open to the high of the day, looks like the average is 1.1%. From the open to the low of the day after earnings, average is down 1.7%. So there you get a open high low distribution. From the opening to the close of the day, it tended to drift lower more oftentimes than higher. 64% of the time, the stock was lower by the end of the day. From the opening price, 36% of the time it was higher for an average loss of negative 0.7%. So that's really quickly a price action analysis on MDT after reporting earnings. There's another style. Let me just go back to the full list over here and see some big movers on the top of the list. So I see this one just popped up as GLB. That wasn't in there like earlier this morning. Looks like maybe there's some news on it, but that's up 151% on 2.2 million shares. Very low market cap, 9.8 million. UONE, that's been on that list all day. That's up 57.8% in the pre-market hours on 4.4 million shares. That market cap is 186.3 million. So let's just take a look at this one for now. UONE Broadcasting. Again, this is a small cap stock, closed at $4.15. Now in the pre-market hours, it's trading $6.62. That's up 59.5%. Here we see that in the pre-market hours, it's had really wide range from $4.55 to as high as $11.95. Pre-market VWAP, $8.52. So we're like almost $2 below that pre-market VWAP. And here's how it looks, the chart. We see popped all the way up here. Now slowly it's coming back down. Long VWAP, longest VWAP bar I see here, traded between $8.61, $9.18 on 837,000 shares. So it looks like had a really big pop in the morning, coming back in right now. Let's take a look at its historical gap moves to the upside. So in the last 3 years, these are the 12 biggest gap moves to the upside. Average is 24.4%. So you see here this way above the average here. And I see here what a high of 62.4% in the last 3 years. What did it tend to do after the opening gap move? So here we see that on average from the open to the high, the average move was 27.3%, but I see a lot of these zeros here, which is telling me that that opening move, when it gapped up, that opening move a lot of times was the high of the day. So it opened higher and then just started drifting lower for the rest of the day. But we do see that when it went higher, here's one on June 15th to 2020, it gapped up 18.5%. And when it went higher, it really went higher. That's up 284%. You know, here 33.4%. So it's volatile, very volatile stock. From the open to the low, the average move was negative 13.3%. From the opening to the close, it looks like it drifted lower more often than going higher. 75% of the time it drifted lower from the open to the close, 17% higher, but the average move was positive 8.3%, because we see here this one move on June 15th, that was up 200% after gapping up and moving up further. So that's a quick analysis on price action analysis on UONE. Couldn't find any news on it. Small cap stock, so possibly there is some news, but I didn't see anything. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I think all I see is that it's just making a list of big movers, but didn't see any catalyst moves on that stock. If you don't have anything on a pre-market, we'll have to go.
We have a couple questions on the pre-market. Actually,
Okay.
Melville was asking,
Yes,
the decliners. If you go to the decliners and screen by market cap, he's looking at one name in particular, but as I did it, the three names that pop up with the largest market cap that are movers on the downside are the ones leaving the Dow, right? But he had a question about the price action. If you could look at the price action in Pfizer, PFE, on
here. Okay, Pfizer over here.
Yeah.
So Pfizer, that's down 1.4% right now on 196,000 shares. Again, there is news on it. This news is different than right. They're leaving the Dow. That doesn't happen every quarter or whatever. So you got to take that into consideration. But let's just take a look at Pfizer gap down history. So this in the last 3 years, biggest opening gap moves to the downside, excluding earnings. So we see the average of those are 4%. Right now, in the pre-market hours is down negative 1.4%. So not that bad compared to these averages. After the opening, what did it tend to do? So let's take a look. The average move from the open to the high of the day is 2.8%. The average move from the open to the low of the day, negative 1.9%. It looks like the drift from the open to the close, kind of almost 50-50, 50% of the time goes lower, 42% higher. You know, here's an unchanged for an average loss of negative 0.1%. So that's basically on Pfizer, today's gap move, not as, you know, not as violent as some of we've seen. And historically, by the end of the day, it's about 50-50 going up and down.
There you go, Melville. Hope that helps.
Let's jump to let's jump to, unless you have any more on pre-market, I'll jump
Nope,
to.
there you go.
Let's take a look at what's coming up in the earnings front. This is in next 2 weeks. We're going to kind of now look at what's coming up in earnings and take a look at it from an options perspective. What are options traders anticipating the magnitude of the move to be in either direction? Remember, magnitude, either up or down. So I'm going to look at, this is a list of stocks expecting to report next 2 weeks. I'm going to filter out stocks that on average trade 10,000 option contracts per day, just to see things that are busier. And here's some that popped out. So here's JWN. I think that's Nordstrom. Is that correct, Will?
It is, yep.
So here, that's expecting to report today after the market close. As of yesterday's close, the straddle was implying a move of 13.1% in either direction, up or down, 13.1%. That compares to the last 4 quarters actual average move, what the stock actually did in the last 4 quarters. It moved up or down 9.8%, and the 12-quarter average move was 7.8%. So we see, as of yesterday, the implied move in the straddle is 3.3% above that 4-quarter average, 5.4% above the 12-quarter average. The high move in the last 12 quarters in Nordstrom was 15.9%. CRM, I think that's Salesforce. That's also today after market close. Was that one?
Well, it's one of the ones entering the Dow, yeah.
That is one of the ones that enter? Okay. So correct. CRM, that's reporting after the market close. As of yesterday, that straddle was priced for implying a move of 5.4% in either direction. That compares to a 4-quarter average move of 2.6% and a 12-quarter average move of 2.9%. So we see that's 2.8% above the 4-quarter average, 2.5% above the 12-quarter average. The high move on that is 10.3% in the last 12 quarters. So those two are expected to report today after the market close. Because we're hitting on getting low on time, I'm going to move from the earnings, maybe do some open interest. And you know what, let me look at some stock screens first. Do you have any questions coming up for earnings, Will?
No, but I do have an interesting question on the stock screener. I don't know if you want to answer that while you're there.
Sure. Okay. So you want to just?
Yep. If you go to the screeners in the stocks, he's asking if you go to the stock ideas.
Yep.
And he wants to see the laggards.
So okay, so let's do all these. So these are the market leaders right now, stocks that are leading the market higher, responsible for leading the market higher in the S&P. So market leaders right now: Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, NVIDIA, Home Depot, PayPal, Adobe, Netflix, UPS, AMD Advanced Micro Devices. Let's take a look at the laggards. So these are the laggards in the Dow: Berkshire Hathaway, BRKB, JP Morgan, Bank of America, AT&T, Intel, Coca-Cola, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Boeing, General Electric, Edwards Lifesciences. So that, let me just take a look at Berkshire Hathaway, because that one's a little bit surprising. So I'm just going to go right now to Berkshire Hathaway just to see if it's lagging the market. So here's Berkshire Hathaway. Let's take a look at that chart. So let's take a look at a 6-month chart of Berkshire Hathaway. This is how it's been doing. So it looks like it's coming back. Let's compare that to the rest of the market, SPY. So let's chart that. So we could see here's SPY performance in the last 6 months in the red versus Berkshire Hathaway. So we can see that it's been lagging the rest of the market in that 6-month period. Looks like Berkshire is still, at least the BRKB stock, down 4.1% versus the market up now 6.4%. So that is kind of lagging the market. So these are the market laggards. Let's take a look at while we're on here, let's take a look at momentum stocks. So these are stocks that have positive momentum. So not just as S&P 500, this is scanning the entire marketplace and looking at stocks that are exhibiting higher highs and higher lows during different periods, 6 months, 3 months, 2 weeks. So we see Apple, Amazon, Baba, Visa, Walmart, Procter & Gamble, NVIDIA, Home Depot, SPY, that's in a positive momentum right now. United Healthcare Group, Adobe, Merck, Salesforce, Nike. So a lot of big caps. Let's take a look at ones that are, let's take a look at the performance in the last 2 weeks, ones that are up in the last 2 weeks. And you know what, let me just do a little bit higher market cap stocks. Let's go over 1 billion. So we hear, not sure, SCHL, Pacific Bioscience of California. So we see a little bit lower market cap stocks. EXP World Holdings, I don't recognize some of these, but there they are. Owns Minor, Overstock, BRP Group, At Home Group. So Caesars Entertainment, that's now in an uptrend, in a positive momentum. Target up in there. Yandex, NVIDIA. So some names that I recognize, some, you know, there's lots of stocks, so I don't see, not all of them. Any questions on that stock screener, Will?
Nope, that's good.
All right, let's jump to, let's take a look at the open interest, see what's anything interesting in the open interest from yesterday. So let's take a look at any open interest that increased by, let's say, 1,000 contracts or more on a particular line. Let's say that on that particular line, it had to be, the open interest had to increase by at least 20% or more of the average daily volume in the options. Let's look at call options. And let's say the option price had to be at least 25 cents or higher. The option had to increase by at least 10 cents or more. Implied volatility had to increase by 10% or more. So I'm just kind of trying to narrow down that list. Let me see. All right, we have 15 of them. Let's say that the, maybe increase this a little bit, 30%. Let's say the closing delta had to be at the money or out of the money, so negative, so 0 to 50 delta. Okay, narrowed it down to 4 now. So here we go. ADMA, two of those made the list. So ADMA, let me just make sure, although that's a $2.87 stock, we'll just take a look at it anyway. ADMA, that looks like a biotech stock. So Feb 19th, 2021, that looks like, you know, they're coming after a leap there. The Feb 7.5 call looks like that closed at 50 cents, up 28 cents on a day. The implied volatility on is up 18.3%. Open interest increased by 2,441 contracts just on that call. That compares to average daily option volume in aggregate of 2,026. And that's why we're getting a long build-up indicator. Also, in that same stock, they went after October 16 expiration, the 5 call. So you see stock closed 287. That's the 5 call that closed at 40 cents, up 20 cents on a day. Implied volatility was up 15.4% on that option to 205. Open interest increased by 1,700 contracts on that line. LI, that stock was up 13.8% yesterday. Let me just open up, see what that is. Lee Auto Manufacturing, it's up 2.9% in pre-market. Let's see what happened there. September 18th expiration, the 20 call, so $3 out of the money from yesterday. That option was up. That option was up $1 yesterday to close at 160. Implied volatility was up 21.2% to 144.4. open interest on that line increased by 1,439 contracts in that call. That compares to 1,190 contracts that trade on average in aggregate in that stock. SBSW, that was up 0.5% yesterday, closed 1166. Looks like the Jan 15th, 2021 expiration, they came for the 20 call. That closed at 63 cents, up 28 cents on the day. Implied volatility was up 18.2% to 82.3. Open interest increased by 2,505 contracts on that line to 7,805. That's where we're getting a long build-up indicator. Let's just see what that does. Siboney Stillwater in the gold. Looks like that's in the gold industry. So that's really quickly just narrowing down some open interest things happening in the open interest report. Let's take a look at, unless you have questions.
Yeah, Will, we got a bunch of questions, Steve, but the first one, Mike, who's been on the chat for since we started the morning show 26 days ago, but he's asking when, how often is the 52-week high low? Well, when is it first updated in the morning, and how often is it updated during the day? He's asking.
The high low of the day, or the 52-week high low. 52. So it'll just the market data is on a 15-minute delay, right? So we're the market data is on a 15-minute delay. Depending on what report you're looking at, it runs on a timer from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. So busier stocks get updated more frequently on a timer. Slower stocks get less frequently. So something like Apple or Facebook will get updated every 5 minutes. Something that maybe trades 100 or 1,000 shares a day will get maybe updated 15 minutes.
Awesome. We had another question earlier. They wanted to know how they can back test strategies. Basically, that was Tariq was asking that earlier in the show.
So, it depends on what you're trying to back test. But when we look at the strategies, we're running a theoretical value. So it's actually using historical data to come up with a theoretical value of what this option or this strategy can be worth. So we're looking at theoretical values. That's what as a professional trader, you're running pricing models using theoretical values, right? Back testing is just kind of going back and seeing what happened in this situation, what happened in that situation. So just to give you ideas how the market was illiquid, when it was illiquid, how did things tend to trade. But if you're looking at just, is the price of this high or low, we use theoretical values to price that.
Sounds good.
Right. So think of it this way. If you thought, if you're taking a rental property and you wanted to know what should I be paying for, you probably look at its, what do they call that? The cap,
cap rate.
The cap rate, right? Am I getting 8%, 10%? But you're not going to back test a real estate and say, well, how would have I done if I bought it, kept buying and selling and buying and selling it. That's just looking at how the market tended to fluctuate through different periods, and where things were trading. But to get a fair valuation, you'd have to run like a pricing model.
Well, there you go, Tariq. All right, D, we're at about we got about 6 minutes if you want to go into something else.
Sure. Let's take a look at maybe implied vol movers. So we're going to look at expirations where the implied volatility is moving up a lot and take a look at what's going on there. So let's take a look at maybe higher market cap stocks over 30 billion. Let's take a look at maybe where the implied volatility, let me see. Ratio. I mean, I guess we could just start out with these. Let's look at maybe common stocks. see what's popping up in there. So here's a couple ones that just kind of came up, that I'm noticing, like Intuit. That looks like yesterday on the September 18th expiration, the implied volatility was 11.5, up 11.5% to 35.6. What that straddle as of yesterday was implying a move from today to expiration of 7.5% in either direction. That compares to an average actual move in the stock for the same period of 5.7%. So we see that's 1.3% above the historical actual average move. High move in the same period of that is 24.4. Apple, the implied volatility was up in September 11th expiration, 11.1% to 49.4. That straddle as of the close was implying a move of 8.9% in either direction. That compares to a historical average actual move of 4.3% using 6 years of data. So that's 2.1 times its historical average move. High move on Apple, 16.9% during the same time periods, same span. Also, looks like in Apple September 4th expiration, that implied volatility was of 11.1% to 49.5. That straddle as of the close was implying a 7.4% move in either direction. That compares to a historical average move in the stock of 30.5%. That's 2.1 times its historical average move right now as implied by the option straddle. So you see here, Apple and Intuit net markets are now pricing in much higher percentage moves than historically, it has done in that same period. Boeing, August 28th, that's coming up this week. Implied volatility was up 12.9% in that expiration to 49.9. That straddle is implying now a move of 5% in either direction. That compares to a historical average move of 3%. That's 1.7 times its historical average move. Let's take a look at some stocks that are maybe in the healthcare industry. And so over here, let's take a look at some that are, the implied move is below the historical average, okay? Let's see, below the historical. So this is where the, did I get that right? Implied move is below the historical average. So here we go. So this is looking at biotech stocks where the where the straddle is implying an implied move is below the actual historical average. So we see here VEV, September 18th expiration, the implied volatility was up 1.1%. That straddle is implying 9.7% move. That compares to a historical average move in that stock of 10.1%, 10.1% for same hold period. CNC, that the straddle August 28th expiring this week, that implied volatility was up 1% to 28.2. The straddle is implying a 2.8% move versus a historical average move of 3.1%. Again, that's looking for straddles that potentially could be undervalued in biotech stocks if the stock is close to that historical average. So here we have a bunch of other ones down the line. Just wanted to kind of go through a couple ones that popped up top. I guess we're running out of time. Tomorrow, maybe I'll do the option strategies in the spread screeners.
Awesome. Well, listen, everyone, thanks for joining us. Really enjoyed the heated discussion on the chat about the 15-minute delay, D. It was really great. We'll have to go back and look at it. Jake, thanks. Okay. Alex, great discussion. D, awesome job as always. Have a great, safe trading day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great trading day, and hope we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning. Same bat time, D. We'll see you.
Bye, everyone.